For years, Colorado's mountain towns were sold as the ultimate American dream, the safest real estate bet on earth, a place where prices never go down. But what if that story is no longer true? What if the most desirable real estate markets in America are no longer correcting, but collapsing? Right now, beneath the glossy Instagram photos and luxury listings, something far more dangerous is happening. Homes are sitting empty for months, prices are being slashed by amounts that look like mistakes. Investors are panicking, communities are hollowing out, and in places once considered untouchable, buyers have simply disappeared. This isn't about one bad town. This isn't about a temporary slowdown. This is a financial freefall, and almost no one is talking about it. Today, we're taking a road trip through Colorado's high country, counting down the 10 mountain towns where the real estate market is breaking the fastest. And by the time we reach number 1, you'll understand why the collapse of this market is a warning sign for far more than just ski towns. So, before we begin, if you're tired of the everything is fine narrative, hit the like button, subscribe for deep dives like this, and let me know in the comments. Are you seeing cracks in your local real estate market too? Let's start the journey. To understand why these markets are breaking now, we need to go back to the moment everything felt unstoppable. During the pandemic, real estate stopped behaving like real estate. It became a gold rush. Interest rates were near zero, stocks were volatile, money was everywhere, and for millions of high-income buyers, working from home unlocked something entirely new: location freedom. If you didn't need to be in an office, why stay in a crowded city when you could live in the mountains? Colorado's ski towns became the perfect target. What were once seasonal vacation markets suddenly turned into full-time lifestyle investments. Buyers weren't just looking for homes, they were looking for safety, status, and returns. Second homes became assets, cabins became portfolios, and Airbnb turned real estate into something that looked like passive income. Prices exploded. People waived inspections. They paid cash. They bought homes they'd never even seen in person. But here's the key point. This wasn't organic demand. It wasn't driven by population growth, local wages, or long-term housing needs. It was driven by temporary conditions, cheap money, remote work, and the belief that the boom would last forever. Then those conditions started to reverse. Interest rates rose, offices reopened, short-term rental rules tightened, and suddenly, the logic holding this entire market together began to fall apart. What looked like a permanent shift and a once-in-a-generation opportunity was actually a very short window, and that window just slammed shut. This is where the freefall becomes visible. As we begin the countdown, towns 10 through 7, the pattern is impossible to ignore. Different places, different vibes, but the same underlying problem. Investors are gone, and real buyers never existed. In places like Pagosa Springs, the market was built almost entirely on short-term rentals. Investors flooded in, snapping up homes not to live in, but to list online. For a while, it worked. Tourism was strong, the calendars were full, cash flow looked guaranteed. Then the rules changed. Local governments stepped in, limiting or freezing new short-term rental licenses. And the moment they did, the math broke. Future bookings dropped, revenue projections collapsed. Homes that only made sense as investments suddenly made no sense at all. That's when listings surged. Luxury homes, especially those bought during the pandemic, began sitting on the market for months. Price cuts followed, then more price cuts. But locals couldn't step in because prices were still far above what local incomes could support. The result? A market with sellers, but no buyers. Durango shows a different version of the same problem. Here, prices haven't crashed yet, but the market is frozen solid. High interest rates locked homeowners into their old mortgages, so they refuse to sell. At the same time, buyers can't afford today's payments. Transactions collapse. New developments sit unsold. Builders quietly offer incentives instead of cutting prices outright. Nothing is moving. And in real estate, a frozen market is often worse than a falling one. Then there's Silverthorne, the textbook case of overbuilding. Developers, fueled by cheap money, built aggressively, condos, townhomes, entire complexes. But when demand vanished, the inventory didn't. Listings piled up. Days on market stretched longer and longer. Nearly half the homes for sale began cutting prices, often in large chunks. Investors pulled out. Locals were priced out, and developers were left holding the risk. Crested Butte takes it one step further into denial. This is an ultra-luxury market where prices soared past any connection to reality. Now, those homes sit for 6-7 months at a time. High-end buyers disappear, price cuts become routine, insurance costs skyrocket, and anyone who needs to sell is facing devastating losses. These towns mark the first stage of collapse. Not panic selling, but something quieter and more dangerous, a market that simply stops working. And as we move further down the list, the consequences only get more severe. As we move deeper into the countdown towns 6 through 4, the story shifts. This is no longer just about investors losing money. This is about communities breaking down. In Steamboat Springs, the warning signs are everywhere. Home prices doubled in just a few years, but local wages barely moved. That gap pushed out the people who actually make the town function. Teachers, nurses, construction workers, service staff. When housing becomes unaffordable, people don't just commute farther, they leave. Schools begin losing students, hospitals struggle to staff shifts, small businesses shorten hours or shut down entirely, and when the workforce disappears, the local economy starts eating itself from the inside. The real estate market reflects that reality. Single-family home sales drop sharply. Condos, especially older units with high fees, flood the market. Investors no longer want them. Locals can't afford them. Prices fall, but confidence falls faster. Then there's Breckenridge. This is one of the most recognizable ski towns in America and a perfect example of how policy, crowding, and costs can collide. Years of rapid growth turned the town into a high-revenue tourism machine, but also a place that became too expensive to live in and too regulated to invest in. Short-term rental restrictions hit hard. Investor income collapsed. Panic listings surged. At the same time, Main Street began hollowing out. Storefronts went dark. Tourists still came, but they spent less, stayed shorter, and moved on faster. Breckenridge didn't lose demand overnight. It lost quality demand. Then we arrive at Telluride. On the surface, it still looks untouched. Stunning scenery, extreme exclusivity, ultra-wealthy owners. But beneath that image is a fragile reality. The ultra-luxury buyer has pulled back. Homes priced in the millions now sit for close to a year. Inventory builds quietly. Sellers wait. And wait. Meanwhile, the cost of living becomes absurd. Basic goods are expensive. Workers are bussed in from hours away. Insurance becomes difficult or impossible to secure. And without insurance, financing breaks. Telluride isn't collapsing loudly. It's freezing slowly. These towns reveal the next phase of the crisis. When real estate stops serving the people who live and work there, the entire system destabilizes. And what comes next is even more dangerous. As we reach towns 3 and 2, the crisis becomes impossible to ignore because the system that keeps resort towns alive is breaking. Let's start with Edwards. Edwards was never meant to be a luxury destination. It was the pressure valve, the place where teachers, firefighters, hotel managers, and restaurant workers lived while they kept nearby resorts running. For decades, this model worked. Then the pandemic changed everything. Wealthy buyers didn't just buy homes in the famous ski towns, they bought everything. Homes in Edwards were snapped up as second homes and investments, pushing prices far beyond what local workers could afford. At first, it looked like prosperity. In reality, it was displacement. Now the consequences are brutal. Jobs go unfilled not because the economy is strong, but because no one can afford to live nearby. Schools can't hire teachers, restaurants cut hours, local spending collapses. The community empties out, even as home prices remain high. The real estate market becomes surreal, expensive houses sitting empty while the workforce drives hours each way or disappears entirely. Edwards becomes a zombie town alive on paper, dead in practice. And then there's Vail. For decades, Vail was the gold standard. If you owned real estate here, you were safe. But today, Vail is facing a different kind of collapse, one driven by aging inventory and crushing holding costs. Many condos were built decades ago. They're expensive to maintain. HOA fees alone can reach thousands of dollars a month. Renovations are unavoidable and incredibly costly. At the same time, a new generation of wealthy buyers is looking elsewhere. They want newer, less complicated properties in places that feel more modern. The result is a market full of motivated sellers and very few buyers. Transactions plunge, listings sit for months, prices are cut, quietly at first, then more aggressively. Even the town itself feels the strain as tax revenue falls and budgets tighten. Edwards and Vail expose a harsh truth. A resort economy cannot survive without the people who work there. And once that foundation cracks, no amount of luxury branding can hold the market together. Up next, the symbolic epicenter of the entire collapse. We had to end here. Aspen isn't just another mountain town, it's a global symbol, a brand. For decades, Aspen represented the very top of the real estate pyramid, a place where the rules didn't apply, where demand was infinite, and where prices were only supposed to move in one direction: up. The phrase everyone repeated was simple: prices never go down in Aspen. That illusion is now shattered. During the pandemic, Aspen became the ultimate safe haven for extreme wealth. Tech founders, hedge fund managers, private equity partners, they all rushed in. Homes traded at numbers so high they barely felt real. 40 million, 50 million, sometimes more. Buying wasn't about value, it was about parking capital. But when the conditions that created that frenzy disappeared, so did the buyers. Sales volumes collapsed. Inventory flooded the market. Homes began sitting for 8, 9, 10 months at a time. And for the first time in decades, prices didn't just stall, they fell sharply. Millions of dollars evaporated in paper wealth. What makes Aspen's collapse so dangerous isn't just the price declines, it's the structure of the town itself. This is a place where most homes are second, third, or fourth properties. Large portions of the housing stock sit empty most of the year. When transactions stop, the entire local economy feels it. Luxury retail slows, art galleries struggle, restaurants lose seasonal traffic. Sales tax revenue drops. Even the town government feels the pressure. Aspen starts to resemble something very different from a living market. It becomes a museum. Beautiful, exclusive, and fundamentally illiquid. The idea that someone else will always pay more no longer holds. The ultra-wealthy are more selective now. They have options. And many of them are choosing places that feel newer, easier, and less expensive to maintain. Aspen's collapse matters because it breaks the final myth. If this market can fall the most exclusive, most insulated, most mythologized real estate market in the country, then no market is immune. Aspen isn't just another data point. It's the signal that the luxury bubble itself has burst. And that brings us to the final question. What does this collapse actually mean, not just for Colorado, but for the entire real estate cycle? So now we zoom out. From investor panic in small mountain towns, to frozen markets, to communities hollowed out, to the collapse of the luxury myth itself, the story is the same. The Colorado mountain real estate boom wasn't built on fundamentals. It was built on cheap money, temporary demand, and a powerful narrative. And when those three things disappeared, the market didn't adjust. It broke. This isn't just about ski towns. It's about what happens when real estate stops being housing and becomes a financial product, when prices disconnect from income, when liquidity is assumed instead of earned. The question now isn't whether prices can fall. The question is, how far and for how long? If you own property in one of these markets, this video is not financial advice, it's a reality check. And if you're thinking about buying, the most dangerous assumption you can make is that it can't happen here. Because we've just seen that it can. I want to hear from you. Are you seeing similar cracks in your local real estate market? Do you think this is a temporary reset or the beginning of a deeper cycle? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I read them all. And if you value clear, data-driven analysis without the hype, make sure to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications. We break down what the market is actually doing, not what people hope it's doing. More deep dives coming soon. Until then, stay curious and stay rational.